Hi, CLRacing here, and this is my 28 volts 720 watts power supply. It's big, it's thick, but it doesn't drip. Let me show you how to make one. Well, actually, I'm making this video because one and only one user asked me to do it. So Airborne, this video is for you. Alright, so why would we want something like this? For starters, almost every battery charger out there in our hobby requires DC input. And this is something that most beginners out there overlook when populating their list of things to buy. Sure, you bought a charger, but how are you going to power your charger? Now, that sounds like a silly thing to ask, as there are chargers out there that accepts AC input or wall power. But those tend to be on the more expensive side of things for the same capabilities. Even then, they would usually be able to deliver higher charging current when plugged into DC input. So for example, this ISDT-D1 can do 100 watts when on AC input, whereas on DC input, it can do 250 watts. And that's the difference of being able to parallel charge 4 packs or 7 packs at the same time. You could be thinking, I could grab one of those ATX power supply that PC desktops use and power the charger with that. They are rated for 500, 800 or even 1200 watts, and so that has gotta do it. Well, yes and no. Yes, you can power up the charger and do a little bit of charging, but no, the problem with that is that they only output 12 volt max, so you will quickly hit the input current limit of the charger. Okay, so let's recap. Even though AC chargers is a thing, it's better to have a DC power supply so that we can charge more packs at the same time. PC power supplies will get bottlenecked by the charger, so what do? Well, we can just stack 2 power supplies together. Combining 2 power supplies to get more power. Makes sense, right? What I did is, I got these stupid cheap, LED signboard power supplies that can be had for like $15 US. They are 12 volts, 30 amps rated, so that's 360 watts each. And I put them in series and voila, 24 volts, 30 amps. So that's 720 watts. That way you'll be able to use most of the chargers out there to their maximum capabilities and still have room to spare. This is a 500 watt charger and it still couldn't use up what my power supply is capable of. The only catch is that you have to make sure the power supply does not have the negative and earth connected, and that is super important. Many power supplies, especially ATX power supplies, have their negatives shorted to earth. We can check this by using a multimeter in continuity mode. That's the mode where it beeps when the 2 leads touch each other. Alright, so we put one lead at a negative terminal and another at earth. It doesn't matter if you have the leads the other way around. So this is earth and this is negative. As long as it doesn't beep at all when you do this, you should be able to use the power supply for this purpose. If it does beep, there are ways to disconnect them, but that involves some electronics know-how, which is outside of scope of this video, and I highly recommend that you do not do that. Just get a power supply that does not have them connected and you should be good. To get a higher voltage than 12 volts, we treat the power supplies as if there are single cells in a battery. Your 2S goggle batteries just meant that there are 2 individual cells connected in series, and that is how you get 8.2 volts. So similarly, replace the cell with the 12 volt power supplies so we get 24 volts. And this is why it's important that the negative terminal on the power supply cannot be connected to earth. Otherwise, you end up shorting out the bottom power supply, and that is no good. Now, to make a series connection, get a thick gauge wire and connect between the positive of the bottom power supply to the negative of the top power supply. And you end up with something like this. So this is the bottom power supply, so it's connected to the positive. Not sure if you can see the terminals. And this is the top power supply, and it's connected to the negative terminal. Alright, so next, let's get a pair of thick gauge wire, preferably color coded correctly. Red is for positive and black is for negative. Okay, so connect the red to the positive end of the top power supply. And then black to the negative of the bottom power supply. Then terminate the pair with an XT60. So I've already done mine. Just make sure that you have the correct polarity. The pointy side is the negative and the flat side is the positive. If you have multiple charges that you want to power at the same time, you can add another pair of wire to the same terminals. So again, this is another pair of wires. Black to the black terminal, the black to the negative terminal of the bottom power supply. And red to the positive of the top power supply. Alright, so next is a dangerous part of the process. If you don't know what you're doing or are uncomfortable working around mains power, get a friend who is an electrician to help you with this. What you need to do is get a wire that has a live, neutral, and earth terminated with a plug that goes into the wall. In my case, it's a UK plug. We connect the brown to live, blue to neutral, and green to earth. The colors might be different depending on which country you're in, so double check which is which before attempting this. Alright, so following the marking, we have, this is earth, neutral, and live. Now at this stage, only one of the power supply will get power, and that's the top power supply. We need both of them to be powered. We achieve that by connecting another set of wires. For this, you don't need a thick wire. I'm just using 14 gauge just because that's what I got lying around. Connect live to the live of the bottom power supply, neutral to neutral, and earth to earth. Alright, so we're basically done. Now we just need to test it out. And again, if you're unsure, get a friend who's an electrician to go over what you just did. And if everything checks out, then we can turn on the mains. Alright, so no smoke, no explosion, so that is a good sign. So one thing to note, whatever you do not touch this area with anything. Ideally, you should cover it up with something to avoid accidentally, poking or touching it with something. Okay, so to test for voltage, put your multimeter into voltmeter mode. Then let's test the voltage of each power supply to make sure they are individually functioning correctly. Red lead on the positive and black lead on the negative. Right, so let's test the top power supply first. Okay, again, do not touch this area. Okay, so red lead on the positive and black lead on the negative. So we are getting around 12 volts. Good. Let's close that down and flip over. Again, be careful of the power leads. Okay, let's do the same thing. Red lead on the positive, black lead on the negative. Yep, it's around 12 volts. Okay, then let's test the voltage across the two power supplies. So you can do that by testing the voltage on the XT60 that you just connected. Okay, alright, so again, red lead on the positive, black lead on the negative. We should get around 24 volts, but that's good enough. And if the voltage is not to your liking, there's this variable resistor right here that you can tweak. This is a feedback resistor that tells the SMPS controller inside what's the voltage at the output terminals. So by tweaking this, you're actually tricking the SMPS controller inside to give you a higher or a lower voltage. I prefer mine to be around 28 volts so that it's slightly higher than 6S voltage. Alright, so how do we do that? Okay, you want to be measuring the positive and the negative of that particular power supply, and tweak this. So to get 28 volts, you need 14 volts per power supply. So 14 volts, and yep, that should do it. Again, close it down. Then let's move on to the next, to the bottom power supply. Okay, you repeat the same thing. Positive, negative. Alright, so turn this up. Around 14 volts. Yeah, let's do better. Alright, so 14.1, yep, I'll take that. Okay, and with that, if you measure across the XT60, you're gonna get 28 volts. And that's it. With a little bit of moving magic, this is what mine ends up looking like. Sure, I could have spent some time covering up the live wires, and well, you should. Look, these are one of those moments where you should just do as I say, not as I do, alright? I'm sure you guys could come up with cool ideas like putting it into the ammo box or Pelican case or something like that. Well, comment down below if you have any good ideas that I should try. So, if you like this video, please give the video a like and subscribe for more janky videos just like this. Till the next video, thanks for watching.